Shadow work is a term we're hearing in passing more and more in the spiritual, witchy, and self-development community. But what actually is shadow work? I mention shadow work all the time in my content, as well as base it in a majority of the curriculum of Alchemy of Affluence Academy. It's a core practice in my craft, and I based most of my personal development around this concept, but a surprising number of people I talk to have no idea what it is. People are even sometimes taken aback by it because the word shadow can sound menacing, especially to those outside the magical community who know that I'm a witch. But trust me, shadow work is one of the most expansive and healthy practices that you can do to walk your highest path. If you're into any kind of new age spirituality or self-help, you probably already have an idea of what shadow work is, and might even already use it in your practice. If so, this will be a fun little briefing on what shadow work means in my practice, and will provide some fresh ideas on how to incorporate it into your life. But if you've been directed to this after hearing the term shadow work for the first time, it's my wish that this will help you understand what people mean when they mention shadow work, and will hopefully spark your interest in this highly beneficial, crucial, personal development practice. Know thyself. In a nutshell, shadow work is the practice of consciously taking a look at the parts of our own psyche that do not make us happy. When defined in that way, it doesn't really sound like fun, so why are so many of us in the community obsessed with shadow work? Well, in the witchy, new age, manifesting, and self-development communities, we're all well aware that our subconscious mind runs the show behind the scenes of our life. We may think we know ourselves pretty well on a conscious level, but often we find ourselves surprised by the way we respond to unexpected situations in life. These are the times when we learn the most about who we really are at any given phase in our development. Every experience we face is an opportunity to prove our core values on the playing field. We can use that information to decide if we're on track with our ideals, or if something needs to be healed within us. So when we react to a situation in a way that we're not proud of, that is a dead ringer that there's a shadow aspect at play in our subconscious mind. So let me begin by saying this. It's okay to have shadow aspects. Everyone has them, and everyone will always have some sort of shadow aspects at any given point along their life path. That's the nature of the dualistic reality that we live in. The laws of our reality are such that we can only experience the presence of something through the exposure to its opposite. Our minds are conditioned to sort concepts and experiences into good and bad categories, and store them away as lessons to help us navigate the unpredictable terrain of the future. This is perfectly normal and will always be a part of our development to some extent, no matter how quote-unquote enlightened we become. The key is to learn how to separate our consciousness from our ego identity, just enough to see outside of this good versus bad dynamic. And why would we want to do that? Well, we learn the subconscious habit of sorting experiences into categories starting the moment we're born, or even before. When we're very young, we cannot see the big picture of what we're experiencing, so our perspective is very limited. We often form a pattern of sorting similar types of experiences or concepts into a particular category without fully understanding why we're seeing things that way. This can create a grand chain of events in our life that we're so deeply rooted in that we can't even see outside of it, like asking a fish to describe what water is. Let's use a really simple example to paint a picture of what this could look like. As you know, I absolutely love animals, and even though I prefer cats, I also adore dogs, and I'm not afraid of them at all. But when I was very little and first learning how to crawl and walk, my aunt had a Doberman who was much bigger than me, and according to older family members, this dog was extremely lovable and would not hurt a fly. But he was very excitable, and like all dogs, could not resist food. Therefore, some of my very first memories of a dog were of being knocked down by this big, mean dog and having my food snatched away from me. I felt that he was a mean, overbearing, and terrible creature, and I even have a very early, vague memory of telling my mother that I didn't like dogs. Fortunately, there were always dogs in my family, and I had the opportunity to learn for myself that dogs were not bad, and I came to love them as soon as I was old enough and smart enough to defend my ice cream cone from their thievery. But what if things had gone down a little differently? Suppose that rather than my mother teaching me that dogs didn't mean any harm and allowing me to form healthy relationships with dogs, she had instead kept me away from dogs and promoted my view of them being bad. I probably would have grown up to hate and fear all dogs, and might even have formed a phobia about them. I might have developed into one of those people who has an irrational fear of even the most docile dogs. The dog would have become a shadow totem in my life, and I would be left with the choice to either live my whole life terrified every time a dog passed me in the street, or eventually facing my fear and giving myself the opportunity to be freed from it through shadow work. With that story as an example, imagine the possibilities of how dark our lives would be if no one ever looked at and responsibly re-evaluated any of their shadow aspects. What if it hadn't been an animal in that story, but a person of a particular skin color, for example? I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably noticed that perhaps what we're experiencing in the world right now is the result of entire groups of people letting their subconscious shadow aspects run their lives. It's clearly not a pretty picture when that happens. It's my honest opinion that it's everyone's personal responsibility to look at their shadow aspects and do the best we possibly can to heal ourselves of those fears and misunderstandings from the inside out. That's how we can save the world, one journal entry, meditation, or tapping session at a time. It's not always such a big, obvious, simple example as that story about the dog. Sometimes, oftentimes, our shadow aspects are so complex and so deeply rooted in our subconscious belief systems that we're almost completely unaware of them. The way I dig deeper and begin healing the more complicated shadow aspects is to observe negative patterns in our lives or in our thoughts. Anytime something triggers you into a negative place, take a moment to meditate on that feeling. Sit quietly and allow yourself to observe how you feel in a patient, non-judgmental way. See if you can identify where the feeling is located in your body. Allow yourself to feel it freely. And then, when you feel ready, ask your higher self to take you back to the first time you can remember feeling that way. Oftentimes, it'll be a very early childhood memory, but sometimes your mind will go to something a little more recent. Either way, try to relive that memory from the perspective of your present self as a third party. Having the wisdom that you have now, you'll be able to see the aspects of the memory that were not apparent to you when you were first going through it with the limited perspective of a younger, less experienced version of yourself. Allow yourself to forgive the people involved in the memory and take responsibility for not letting yourself remain a victim of that pattern, which was formed as an unconscious result of that experience. One method that works really well for me is to visit a younger version of myself as a sort of guardian angel future self. For example, if I were to do a healing meditation in the above hypothetical example of being afraid after being bullied by a greedy dog, I would take some deep breaths and ask my mind to travel back to that memory. I would observe the dog knocking me down and stealing my ice cream cone, and seeing my toddler self crying angrily about it. I would then step into the scene and act as a guardian angel to my younger self. I'd pick the child version of me up, hold her, tell her everything is okay, and explain to her that the dog did not mean to hurt her. I would tell her that dogs can't communicate the same way humans do, and that they don't know their own strength. I'd tell her that one day soon she would learn how to outsmart the dog, and that she would go on to have a lot of fun with dogs as companions in the near future. One day she would be very thankful to have dogs in her life. Once the child felt better, I would tell her goodbye, assuring her that I'd return the next time she needed me. Then I would allow my mind to fast forward through every experience in the chain of memories that had resulted from that first memory, healing and empowering all the way back to the present moment. I would then emerge from the meditation, no longer feeling like a victim, but ready to step forward and end the negative pattern as a responsible, empowered, magical adult. Next step, you guessed it, journaling. I suggest journaling as the answer to life all the time, and no, I will not shut up about it. Journal, journal, journal. It really is the best way to know thyself. If possible, go right into a journal entry immediately after coming out of your time travel meditation. Write down your thoughts, feelings, memories, and resolutions. It's okay if you don't feel fully healed from the pattern. Don't ever feel obligated to resolve everything in one fell swoop. Allow yourself to spill your guts about what you're feeling. Even just allowing your mind to put it into words can be surprisingly healing. Another really powerful practice you can do in your shadow work sessions is automatic writing. This is where you set a timer and command your subconscious mind to flow out onto the pages. Specify to yourself that this session is intended to give a voice to the part of yourself that feels like a victim to the shadow situation at hand. The key here is not to allow your conscious mind to think and decide what to write. You must keep the pen moving the entire time and write down exactly what pops into your mind, uncensored and unedited. When the timer is up, stop immediately. Now read over what came out of you during that session. You may be surprised what your subconscious mind has said. It'll help you understand what your subconscious is thinking and feeling as you're going through the experiences that trigger this shadow aspect. So, all right, you've done the meditation and you've done the journaling. Now what? This is where healing with mantras comes into play. A mantra is a short script that you can repeat to yourself whenever you feel yourself potentially reverting back down the path of negative thought. Take the key words that came up in your journal entry about how the victim version of yourself feels, and now choose words that are the positive opposite of those negative feelings. Form those words into 1 to 3 sentences that describe how you want to feel instead. If you happen to have my book on how to use 369 method and scripting and the 555 method for manifestation, you can also cross that over with this practice. For example, if my memory about the dog made me feel weak, powerless, and taken advantage of, I could focus on the words strong, powerful, and compassionate. I could come up with a mantra that says, I have faith in my inner strength. I claim my own power to steer the direction of my life. I am compassionate towards others, and I am compassionate towards myself. Take deep, slow breaths as you repeat your mantra in your head or out loud as many times as you need to in order to begin feeling more calm and empowered. I find that allowing the mantra to sort of play in the background of my mind as I'm going about my day can help commit it to the subconscious mind. It doesn't always have to be at the very forefront of my mind to work. It can become a sort of ambience that plays in the background and helps me to relax or fall asleep even. I have a blog post / YouTube video / podcast sharing specially crafted rituals on how to work with mantras, affirmations, and incantations, and I will link that with this episode. What's most important is that you begin to make decisions in life that steer you out of your negative pattern and into the empowered version of yourself who's driven by love rather than fear. That's the foolproof path to authentic fulfillment in life. I've dedicated a big chunk of my career to understanding the subconscious mind and using witchy practices for manifesting real-world lifestyle upgrades. And I've channeled everything I've learned into easy yet powerful practices you can use to step into your ideal life starting now. So if healing your negative patterns and transforming your perceived weaknesses into your greatest superpowers is of interest to you, I invite you to join me on Patreon, where we do weekly discussion prompts, some of which are crafted to help you ease your way into shadow work in a way that feels approachable and helpful. It's my wish that everyone learns how to benefit from the powerful practice of shadow work so that we can all heal the world, starting with ourselves. The practices discussed in this video have been just a few of my favorite witchy writing techniques and rituals that I've used along my path. I call myself the writing witch because the practice of putting pen to paper to help understand myself, love myself, heal myself, and expand myself has always been my go-to magical practice, even before I knew to call it magical. Once upon a time when I was a little girl, long before I knew I was a witch, I found a pewter goblet with scented wax and a wick inside of it at an off-price home decor chain. And despite its not-so-mysterious origin, I felt a magical connection to it. I was really into fantasy movies and books like The Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, and it reminded me of something Galadriel, the Elven Queen, would use to cast a spell, or that my boy Dumbledore would have on his desk at Hogwarts. So I bought it with my allowance and placed it on the bedside table, where I would burn the candle and write in my ornate leather-bound diary about who I wanted to grow into in the new year, and other such rituals. And even after growing up, moving around a lot, and parting with 90% of my childhood belongings, this chalice somehow stuck with me. Whether I was adding it to my still life references as a painting student in college, using it as college apartment decor, or eventually elevating it to a proper altar tool once I found my witchy path in my early 20s, this object has always been a treasured part of my practice. And now I'm recreating that treasure for you. I've been hunting for beautiful and unique antiques and filling them with my own magical candle blends. And I've put them together into these fun writing ritual kits so that you can recreate some of the magic that you saw in this video with a simple kit. This set consists of a vintage silver or brass goblet of some kind, filled with my magical seasonal wax blend, and topped with herbs, crystals, and a charm that you can add to a necklace chain, along with 10 sheets of my ever-popular handmade aged parchment paper and one of my handcrafted crystal writing wands. Once the candle is burned down, you can remove the wick tabs with the pliers and clean your chalice out with hot water and/or a paste made from baking soda, vinegar, and dish liquid with an old toothbrush or textured rag. Little witchy tip for you there. And you can re-pour your own wax into it, or you can use it as a holder for tea lights, place an incense stick in it like I did in this old footage from 2014, or even drink out of it if you clean and sanitize it well. And of course, as always, the Writing Witch shop promotes an eco-friendly lifestyle, so these magic writing wand pens are meant to be reused. All you have to do is pull the nib until it pops off, and you can purchase a pack of replacement ink tubes at any office supply store, or you can cheat and just swap it out for one from a ballpoint pen that you have on hand. While I do plan to continue creating chalice candles, this first line of products that I've launched this month is one of a kind. I can't guarantee I'll find all the same styles of antique chalices again in my future treasure hunts, so if any of these are speaking to you, I invite you to snap them up before they're gone. There are currently 7 sets available at the time that this video is being recorded. These sets are perfect gifts for witchy writers in your life, or for your own intention-setting rituals, or burning ceremonies, or any kind of magical writing you plan to do for the solstice/New Year season that's coming up. To get yours, I invite you to go to the link you see on the screen, and it will also be linked below. Brightest blessings and happy shadow hunting.